We are in one of the most exciting chapters of the book of Exodus today. Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14. Wow, what a chapter. In chapter 12, you remember, the Israelites are saved from years of Egyptian bondage. They've been in Egypt, you remember, 400 years. In chapter 1, there were 70 of them who went down there from Canaan to Egypt. Joseph was there. And now after, if you'll notice in chapter 12, verse 37, 430 years to the day, they are now saved from the land of Egypt by the Passover, the shedding of the blood. And when you ever get to heaven, and the Lord says, "Why should I let you into my heaven?" What will your answer be? There is only one answer. That is by the blood of the Lamb. Jesus is our Passover Lamb, right? He is the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And their gospel is in chapter 12. It's incredible. Now in chapter 13, notice, if you will, verse 20. Then they set out from Sukkoth and camped in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. So in chapter 12, the Lamb has given his life and they are saved from Egypt. And now they begin their journey of faith. Boy, what an exciting journey it's going to be. The journey of, they're going to learn to live by faith and not by sight. That's a terrific lesson to learn. So now in chapter 14, it divides itself into 4 Ds. So we'll follow a 4D outline, if you like outlines, 4 Ds. The first D is in verses 1 through 9. It has to do with decisions. There are 2 decisions in verses 1 through 9 of Exodus chapter 14. Verse 1, now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite by the sea." And so the first decision is God deciding which way they are to go. He's dictating to them. Look at chapter 13. Kurt just touched on this last time. Chapter 13, verse 17. Now when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines. Notice the next phrase, underscore the next phrase. Even though that was what? Even though that was near. Can you stick that on the? Can you stick that on the board? Todd's got a map on the board. Even though that was near, for God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return them to Egypt. Verse 18. Hence, God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea. And the sons of Israel went up in, I don't know that word. What's that word? What's that word? Martial organized. They went up in martial array from the land of Egypt. Now on the map, can you see the map? There's the man. Deuteronomy 1:2. Write that in your margin somewhere. Deuteronomy 1:2. Because there's an 11-day journey from Goshen. They lived in the land of Goshen in Egypt. There's an 11-day journey. You see at the bottom of the picture where Mount Sinai and Horeb is. From there to Kadesh Barnea, up there on the border of the land of Palestine. There's Kadesh Barnea. That's 11 days journey. So if you went right from Goshen right over to the land of Canaan, it would have taken you 11 days. It took them how long? Come on. It took them 40 years to take an 11-day journey. Now, in chapter 14, verse 1, God told them to camp down by Pi Hathroth. You can see that on your map there. And they're going down to the Red Sea. You can see that on your map there. Now, it's very important that you understand the 3 reasons why God led them, not the shortest way, but the longest way. There are 3 reasons. You've got to understand the 3 reasons why God led them the longest way, not the shortest way. You understand that? Okay. Number 1, look at chapter 14, verse 1, and compare that with chapter 13, verse 17 and 18. Compare those 14:1 with 13, 17, and 18. Number 1. Now look at chapter 14, verse 4. The first reason, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So number 1, the first reason God led them the short way instead of the long way is because God's going to take this opportunity to display his power over Egypt's army. God wants pagan Egyptians to know him. Just notice that, verse 4. The Egyptians will know that I am Jehovah. That's capital L. You remember that? That's the word Jehovah. God wants the Egyptians to know that he is the Lord, that he is Jehovah. So God's taken them the long way around for God to display his power to conquer the Egyptian army and to display his glory and his power. So that's number 1. God is going to let Egypt know that he is God. Who is in control here? Who is boss? That's very important. The Israelites have lived in Egypt for 400 years. And God has, in the previous chapter, taken 10 times. God has tried to show the Egyptians that he is God. That he is God over their gods. What is God in the world? What is God trying to do in this world? He's trying to prove to the people in this world who are pagan, idolatrous, worldly people, God is trying to get people's attention and to show them that he is God. Your neighbor, your your pagan family, whoever they may be, wicked, idolatrous, they have no thought for God, they may even deny God's existence. So you see what's happening in this chapter? God is showing the Egyptians, these pagan, idolatrous people, wicked people. God is trying to show to them that he is God, making himself known to the Egyptians. Number two, the second reason, go back to chapter 10, verse 1. This is repeated 3 times in these chapters. Back to chapter 10, notice verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may perform these signs of mine among them, that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your grandson how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and how I performed my signs among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So I want this is an opportunity. Number one was to display the power of God. Three P's, to display the power of God. Number 2 is an opportunity for parents to instill on their children who God is, that God is real, he'll answer prayer, he'll with you, he'll protect you, he will care for you. Your kids need to know that, and your grandkids need to know that. And who teaches them that? God does. So when you sit down with your kids and you do the Passover and you have communion and you take this little bitty cup of grape juice and you drink it in front of your grandkids, and then you take a little sliver of bread and you eat that in front of your grandkids, what are they going to say? I'll guarantee you they're going to say in the next few days or whatever, "Dad, why are you doing that? Grandpa, what are you doing that for? What's that little cup of grape juice for? What's that little piece of unleavened bread for? What's that all about?" Now, look at chapter 12, verse 26. The same thing happens again. 3 times it happens. Chapter 12, verse 26. "And when your children say to you, 'What does this rite mean to you?'" It's tragic that we in our church never have our children in the same meeting with us when we take communion. There's something missing to that. That is an opportunity for us, parents, to teach our children and our grandchildren, what is that little cup for? That represents the blood of Jesus. I'm saved because of the blood of Jesus. That little wafer, what's that wafer for? That's the body of Jesus that was broken for us on the cross. These 3 reasons are really important. Number 3, well, the last one is in chapter 13, verse 8. 3 times, 13 verse 8. "And you shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt." Parents, tell your kids, tell your grandkids, why do you go to church every Sunday? Why do you take that little cup of juice? What's all that about? This ritual, this routine that you go through all the time. What's all that about? So all this happened, number 1, to display the power of God. Number 2, to give parents an opportunity to teach their kids and their grandkids. Look at what God has done for us. Number 3, in chapter 14, verse 31, the last verse. 14:31. When Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, what happened when they saw that? The people feared the Lord, and the people what? And the people believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Number 3, it produces trust. Produces trust. So this journey they're on, going from Goshen clear down to Mount Sinai, we're going to display the power of God. Number 2, we're giving parents an opportunity to tell God why this happened and how it happened. And number 3, it's going to produce trust, faith. People believe God. So now they know by personal experience. Boy, you need to know that. You need to know that by personal experience, what the Lord has done in your life. And you need to know it because of chapter 15 and chapter 16. Read ahead, chapter 15 and 16. You need to know it. You need to know God. You need to be able to trust him because more trials are coming. More trials are coming. When you read chapter 15 and 16, you will see one trial after another. Todd talked about last Sunday. One difficulty after another. Wow. 2 decisions in verses 1 through 9. And we've only got through one half. The second decision is in verses 5 through 9. The second decision, the first decision is about God deciding which way they are going to go. He led them the long way for reasons. The second decision now is in verses 5 through 9. The second reason, the second decision is by Pharaoh. Pharaoh now decides that he's going to chase after the children of Israel and he's going to bring them back to Egypt. That's his decision. Now you'll notice in verse 3 the logic of that decision. Pharaoh looks down and says, Pharaoh's going to say of the sons of Israel, they are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. This is a piece of cake. Is verse 3 true or false? Verse 3 is absolutely false. Is his reasoning correct? Is his reasoning correct? Are they wandering aimlessly in the wilderness? They are not wandering aimlessly. Who led them there? They're there on purpose. They're not wandering aimlessly. God led them there. Is the cloud still there? Is the cloud still there? The cloud is still there. Did the cloud lead them there? The cloud led them there. The cloud, they're not wandering aimlessly like a bunch of nomads in the wilderness. That's faulty thinking on Pharaoh's part. That's totally false. Now, look at verse 5. This is Pharaoh's decisions now. When Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart toward the people, and they said, "What is this that we have done? Boy, how could we have been so stupid that we have let Israel go from doing what? From serving us." Pharaoh realized this. We have just lost a huge, skilled labor force. How many of them are there, by the way? Back in chapter 12, verse 37, chapter 12, 37, how many people are there? There are 600,000 men on foot. That's 600,000 men who can march, besides the women and the children. So how many people are we talking about? You're probably talking about 1 million people. And Pharaoh says, I have lost 1,600,000 at least, 600,000 skilled labor force. How could I have been so stupid? That's funny. Now you remember back in chapter 1, verse 7, and chapter 1, verse 11. Egypt were slaves, and they had built. Why are you wearing a mask? You're the only one in the whole. Smart. And Rita is there holding her nose. Anyway, where are we at? The children of Israel, you remember, they are skilled people. And they have built for Pharaoh, they have built cities, storage cities. Look at chapter 1, verse 7 and 11. They had built for him cities. They're skilled. They're a great labor force. So now in verse 6 and 7, so he made his chariot ready. He didn't ask somebody else to do it. He did it himself. You notice that? He made his chariot ready and took his people with him. And he took 600 select. You got the word select? What's that mean? They're special forces. They are the Green Berets of the Egyptian army. They are the Navy SEALs of the Egyptian army. They're the elect. He took 600 elect chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And so Pharaoh says, he decides, we're going to go back and bring these skilled laborers, we're going to bring these slaves back to Egypt. Can you put yourself in history and understand why the South was so adamant about Abraham Lincoln wanting to emancipate the slaves? These slaves are the economy of Egypt. 600,000 of them. They're the workforce. They're building stuff for Pharaoh. That's the economy. Well, let's not get involved in that. Now, there are two technicalities that you got to pay attention to in this chapter. There are two technicalities, okay? Number one is in verse 5. Verse 5, 14:5. When the king of Egypt, you notice what happened next? He's told that the people have fled. You mean to tell me 1 million people have walked out of my country and I didn't know that? He's told that. Where's he at? What's he been doing? Well, the answer is back in Genesis chapter 50. What's he been doing? Genesis chapter 50. Go back a few pages to the left. Genesis 50, verse 2. Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, his dad. That's Jacob. So the physicians embalmed Israel. That's Jacob's name. Now, 40 days were required for such is the period required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him. How long? 70 days. What happened to Pharaoh in chapter 12? Pharaoh's oldest boy died at midnight, along with every other house in Egypt. So what do you think Pharaoh was doing and has to be told? He's back home burying his boy. He's back home having him embalmed. How long does it take? 40 days to embalm Pharaoh's son. 70 days of mourning for Pharaoh's son. So Pharaoh is all taken up with the burial of his boy. And so he has to be told that 1 million people have walked out of your city. That's verse 5. That's the first technicality. He has to be told that. Second technicality is verse 8. Verse 8. We tend sometimes to skip over words. Words are important. Notice verse 8. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he chased after the sons of Israel as the sons of Israel were going out. What's the next word? They're going out boldly. What does yours read, Betty? What's yours read? Verse 8. Oh, okay. The King James says they went out with a high hand. You know what a high hand is? You know what a high hand is? They went out saying what? Hallelujah! I'm free at last. 400 years they've been in Egypt. Couple hundred years they've been slaves there in Egypt. Now, by the setting of the Passover lamb, they are free. And they go out, it says boldly, the word is high-handed. They went out with hands raised. One translation reads, with fists raised in defiance. That's one translation reads. Fists raised in defiance. They went out with a high hand. You see that on the news all the time, don't you? You see people raising their hands and their fists in the air. That's that verse. Well, we finally got through number 1. Man, I don't know if we'll ever make it to number 4. How are we doing? Okay. Let's hurry on. The second D now is in verses 10 through 15. The second D. The second D is the dilemma of the Jews. Verse 10. Pharaoh drew near. The sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they became what? They became very frightened. They became afraid. They are gripped with fear. So the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. Wow. Now, get the picture here. This is the first major crisis that these people have experienced since they have been saved. You understand that? In chapter 12, they're saved by the blood of the Lamb. Now, they're on a journey now. Now, this is the first major crisis that they have experienced since they have gotten saved. Major crisis. This is not the last one. This is only just the beginning. Chapter 15 and 16 tells you more. This is the first one. Can you remember the first crisis that you experienced as a new Christian? Can you remember that? Think back. Now, as you read the chapters, you know that Moses didn't tell them that this was going to happen. They weren't warned about this. Moses didn't tell them the Egyptians are going to come and try to get you back. He didn't tell them that. They weren't trained. They weren't prepared. They weren't ready. This is the first major crisis that they've ever experienced in their life. Now, how do you respond to a crisis? Whether mental, physical, marital, whatever, financial. How? There are 3 ways people respond to a crisis. 3 ways people respond to a crisis in their life. Number 1, verse 10. And they became very what? They were afraid. They were paralyzed by fear. Fear. Wow. There are 3 P's here. 3 ways we respond to a crisis. 3 P's. Number 1 is panic. Number 1 is panic. They were very, very, very frightened. Not a little scared. They were scared to death, man. Panic. Wow. Mentally, you fall apart because you can't cope with it. It's just too much to cope with. How do I solve that problem? How do I look at? How do I have? People have nervous breakdowns. They just fall apart. They can't handle it. I understand that. They get depressed. They want to give up. They want to run. They want to flee. Boy, that's heavy. That's heavy stuff. Verse 10. Number 2, the second P is they pray. You see that in verse 10? And so the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. They prayed. What do troubles do to Christian people? Drives you to your knees, man. God, I need help here. I'm in trouble here. There are 1,000 chariots on my back door, and they're going to take me back to Egypt as a slave. And we weren't ready. We're not prepared. We don't have one single chariot. Lord, what do we do? What do we do when we pray? We cry out to God. I just finished reading a book about the sinking of the SS Indianapolis. I don't know if you remember that or not. It was one of the President Roosevelt's fastest ship in the Second World War. It was torpedoed by the Germans in the war, and it was sunk. It's the story of how the survivors were adrift for, I think it was 5 days in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with sharks circling all around them, and sharks eating them up one after another. It tells the story of how sailors crying out to God for help. Captivating story. You've heard of Foxhole Prayers, haven't you? Yeah, you've heard of them. You may have prayed one yourself. Probably not in some foxhole somewhere. Probably beside a bed. It may have been beside your husband's casket. It may have been beside your baby's crib. Facing a crisis. It may be in a hospital room. I don't know. Every child of God goes through crisis. Every child of God goes through a crisis. Why? I've already given you 3 reasons why we go through crisis. We've already been through that. Now understand that this crisis never happened again. Never happened. The Red Sea was never parted again in all of history. God does not throw miracles around just to astonish you or just to make you entertained. This never happened again. Every crisis was different. Every crisis was tailor-made. Read chapter 15 and 16. Every crisis is tailor-made just for you. You understand that? You can shake your head or say amen or something. Don't fall asleep on me here. Wow. Number 1, they panic. Number 2, they pray. Number 3, in verse 11 through 12. Boy, I hate to bring this up. Verse 11 and 12. Then they said to Moses, "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt?" Wow, what a statement. That you have taken us away to die in the wilderness. Moses, you did this to us. Why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians as slaves than to die in this wilderness. Isn't that a far cry from Patrick Henry? Third point, third P. How do you respond to a crisis in your life? You can panic. You can pray. And number three, you can do what? You can point the finger at your leaders. That's what they're doing in verse 11 and 12. They're pointing their finger at their leaders. Oh, my doctor gave me a wrong diagnostic. How many times have I heard that? Point the finger and blame and criticism. Number three, we point the finger at blame and criticism to our leaders. Well, before it was Trump, that dirty scoundrel. Now it's Biden. That dirty scoundrel is putting us in debt we'll never get out of. It's Biden. No, it's not Biden. It's, what's the governor's name? Whitmer. It's the governor's Whitmer. No, it's not the Republicans. It's them stupid Democrats. They're liberal Democrats. And then you come to the church, and you got a box over here across the street, half finished, $3 million gone down the tube. And what do? We point the finger. Well, it's the pastor's fault. No, it's I can't think of his name, Neil's fault. No, it's the building committee's fault. Who's the chairman of that building committee anyway? Anybody know? Do you see what's happening here? Do you see what's happening here? They're pointing fingers. What do you got to do? I'm telling you, we are masters at that. If it wasn't for my stupid husband, if it wasn't for my wife, we are masters at this, pointing the finger. We're masters at it. We learned that from who? We learned that from Adam and Eve in the garden. The woman you gave me, you. Now, in verse 13 and 14, Moses gives the right response. Jesus said, you remember, you shall know the truth, and the truth will do what? The truth will set you free. It'll set you free from what? It'll set you free from your fear. The truth will set you free from your fear, from your panic, and from your pointing fingers at other people. It'll set you free from that. The truth will set you free. Now, here you are. Here you are at the Red Sea. Here you stand. What's the truth about this? I'm scared to death. What truth conquers that fear? Number one, who brought me here? Who brought me here? Who brought me here? God. God brought me here. Number two, God will be with me here. Is God with you? Verse 19, 14:19. The angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Thus the one did not come near the other all night. The truth will set you free. What truth? God has me here on purpose. God has me here. I'm experiencing this crisis on purpose. You understand that? I'm experiencing this crisis on purpose. There are three reasons God gave this crisis to them. We've already been through that. So I'm here by God's appointment. Number two, God is here. Number three, will God see you through? Will He be with you through it all? Will He protect you? Will He provide for you? Will He care for you? Those are truths that will set you through. Will God be with you through the crisis? He will be with you. He will go with you. In verse 14, the Lord will fight for you while you shut up. Just shut up. Just keep quiet. Quit your blame. Quit your praying. He says to him in verse 15, why are you praying? Why are you crying out to me? Don't you ever know what it means to be silent, to be quiet? Okay. Holy smokes. I could get a drink. Want a drink? I think it's just plain water, Tommy. Okay, how you coming? Number 1D? Come on. Number 1D, decisions. Who made them? God did and Pharaoh did. Number 2D, the dilemma of the child of God. I'm in a crisis. God, I'm in a crisis here. I'm in a mess here. The third D, verses 16 through 22, is the dividing of the sea. The dividing of the sea. Verses 16 through 22 is the dividing of the sea. Now, these are the wow verses of the chapter. These are the wow verses of the chapter. There are miracles taking place here. There are three of them I want to give to you. Number one is in verse 16, the miracle of the dry ground. Can you imagine? It's mentioned 3 times in this chapter. Verse 21 and verse 29. 3 times he mentions dry ground. Can you imagine walking through the middle of a sea and there's not dampness? There's what? There's dust. You don't have to wear a boot. You can wear your sandals. It's dry ground. That's a miracle in itself. The second miracle is in verse 21, is the wind. The wind. Wow. God commands the wind. There are 3 D's about the wind. Number 1 is this direction. What direction did it come from? It came from the east. Verse 21. A gale force wind came from the east. Number 2 is the duration of the wind. How long did it blow? It blew all night long. A gale force wind all night. Not a hurricane, just for a few minutes. It's gale force wind all night. Number 3 is the dividing power of the wind. Its direction, its duration, and its dividing power. The word divide means to cleave, means to render asunder. And the third miracle, number 1 is the dry ground, number 2 is the wind, and number 3, in verse 22 and verse 29, is the wall. It's a wall. It was a wall on the right, and it's a wall on the left. Can you imagine? You're going through a body of water, which is a wall over there and a wall over here, and you're going right through the middle of this thing. The wind has blown a tunnel right through the middle of that body of water. I'm telling you, that is amazing. Amazing. Fourth D, verses 23 through 30, is the defeat of the entire mighty Egyptian military. The defeat of the entire mighty military force of Egypt. 23 through 30. 4 C's here. Number 1, this was accomplished in verse 24. You notice by confusion. 4 C's. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud. Is God still there? God's still there. Is he looking out for you? Yeah, he's looking out for you. And brought the Egyptians into what? Confusion. The word confusion means, in the King James, troubled in the King James. The word means commotion or chaos. Why are they in such chaos? Well, number 2, in verse 25, they are in chaos. Why? Because the chariots have blown a tire. The chariots blew a tire. Can you imagine 1,000 chariots going through the middle of this tunnel, a wall on the right and a wall on the left? And here you can't get that horse and that chariot because the wheel fell off. It had a blowout. Who did that? You think that's just happened? You think just all of a sudden 600 chariots are rendered powerless? Holy smokes, it's 11 o'clock. Okay, number 1, confusion. Number 2, The chariots are rendered powerless. That's why there's chaos. Number 3, in verse 25, there's condemnation. Verse 25, he caused their chariots' wheel to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. That's an understatement I've ever heard of. You ever try to drive a car with a tie rod brake? One wheel drive with difficulty. Yeah, they drove with difficulty. So the Egyptians said, let us flee from Egypt. Next phrase, for the Lord's doing what? The Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians. The Lord's doing that. What did God want to prove? He wanted the Egyptians to know that I am the Lord. Verse 4. That's what this is about. God wanted the Egyptians to know that he is what? Jehovah. Now they're saying in verse 25, what are they saying? The Lord is fighting for them. So now they realize who the Lord is. Now they realize who is in control. Now they know who's boss. It's a little bit too late, isn't it? It's a little too late. You can believe in God all you want, and you'll go straight to hell. Do you understand that? You can believe in God all you want, and you'll go straight to hell. You understand that? There are religious churches all over this country who every week pray to God, talk about God. They miss one thing. They miss the blood of Jesus. They never talk about the blood of Jesus. Now we got condemnation. They know who God is. They know who Jehovah is, but it's what? It's too late. They're damned. They're doomed. It's all over. They know it, but it's too late. Too late. The fourth C is in verse 26 through 28. Is the covering of every soldier by drowning. You notice? Not even one of them remained. Every soldier, every chariot. Where did I read about that? It doesn't say that so far, does it? Doesn't say it. But it implies that. Yeah, it implies that. Now you can remember. Can you remember the relief? Can you imagine the relief of 1 million people crossing a sea on dry ground and standing on the shore looking at 1,000 chariots scrambling around with the dust and the dirt, and they are perishing, and you are on the other side. You are finally on your way home. Hallelujah. No wonder they went out with hands raised. But you can't imagine, for the life of me, I couldn't imagine how I would feel if I stood on the other bank and watched all those soldiers drowned and get washed up on the shore. Back in chapter 12, every house in Egypt buried their oldest boy. Every house buried their oldest boy. And now, who's driving the chariots? Who's driving the chariots? The oldest boy's younger brother. He's driving the chariots. And now, the Egyptians are mourning again over the death of another boy.